Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Walk. This is our third session in our Advent series called The Arrival. In our first session, we talked about long ago traditions and how they still bring hope to us today. In our second session, we learned about Mary and Joseph and being chosen as the Holy Family. In all their chaos, they were faithful and felt God with them throughout their journey, bringing them a peace that was beyond their understanding. In this third session, The King of Kingmakers, our story comes from the Gospel of Matthew 2:1 through 16, and centers around a group of foreigners, the Magi, who traveled hundreds of miles to Israel to worship a newborn king. It's interesting to note that both the Magi and King Herod believed that the Christ child was indeed a newborn king, but they reacted in dramatically different ways. In this session, you will learn 3 lessons from the Magi's that can make your celebration of Advent more meaningful. So who were the Magi exactly? That's not an easy question to answer because historians, scholars, and theologians have discussed and debated that for centuries. And even today, the answer is not entirely clear. These Magi were advisors to the king of Babylonia and other important people in their region. They consulted the stars, dreams, and omens to offer their advice. Babylonians were polytheistic, meaning they worshipped other gods. In addition to this mystical adversary role, it is also thought by some that they played an important role in the coronation of a new king. Currently in England and other countries, a priest or a bishop will coronate a new king, and this is similar to what the Magi's role was. Scholars believe that they might have seen some sign in the stars, or one of them may have had a dream that a newborn king was born. When this happened, they would gather other Magi and travel, sometimes long distances, following the star to the new king, and announce his birth by bringing him gifts. It would seem that this is what happened in Matthew's account. There was a new star over Bethlehem that told these Magi a new king had been born. And so the Magi packed their bags and traveled from an eastern region to Israel. But there was one small problem. Israel was under the rule of a Roman Empire who already had a king, King Herod. King Herod was not Jewish and was very cruel to the Jewish people. He used force and violence to assert his authority over the nation of Israel. Based on several stories in the Gospel, it seems that King Herod was very insecure about himself and his position as a ruler. Perhaps he was afraid of rebellion or being removed from power. When the Magi stopped off and paid a visit to King Herod before finding the baby Jesus, Herod did not appreciate the news of a newborn king in his jurisdiction. And because of his insecurity, when the Magi did not report back to the king the whereabouts of this newborn king, he ordered the death of all the toddlers and infants in the region. There are several things that we can learn from this story of the Magi. Although they were considered kings, they didn't worship the king, the God of Abraham. And as far as we know, they were essentially mystics, ancient astrologers, and political advisors. And yet they saw the star and believed it would lead them to a new king. You know, God is still trying to attract unbelievers and outsiders to himself. God may use something in nature or some life circumstance to bring others who don't believe to him. And God may even use you. This story of the Magi can remind us that even today, God is on the move to seek and save the lost. As followers of Jesus, shouldn't we be doing the same? We need to keep on the lookout for those who are seeking. They may be seeking purpose or meaning, and in these days of COVID, they may be seeking hope and acceptance or comfort and peace in their suffering. It's up to us to help them follow the star and see that all those things they are seeking can be found in a manger and the birth of a newborn king. The second lesson we can learn from the Magi is that God uses many sources to speak to us. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to take astrology or become a dream analyzer, but God can and does use unorthodox means to get our attention. But we need to be seeking him like the Magi. And the third lesson we can learn from the Magi is to give Jesus our best gifts. The Magi's gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh were not only valuable and worthy of a king, but many see the symbolism in these gifts, that God created us to be valuable and worthy of a king. Living out God's plan for our life with purpose is God's dream for us. You know when you're giving your best gifts, when you feel joy in what you do while you make a positive impact on others. As we light the third candle of joy, let's learn from these rather mysterious characters in the Nativity story that God still seeks those who are lost and uses us to point the way, that God uses many different ways to speak to us. We just need to have to keep our eyes and ears open, and that God wants us to give our best gifts as we live out His plan for our lives. Have a great week. Love and miss you all.